Sharon Ingman, that I'm very proud to be part of this wonderful history of the Iowa Jewish Historical Society. As one of our co-presidents, and my fellow co-president, Linda Bremen, is standing here next to me, we are delighted to welcome you and to thank you for coming to this very special program. The existence of the Iowa Jewish Historical Society and the program tonight would not be possible without the support of our members and donors and everyone who participates in our programs and all of you here tonight. We especially want to express our thanks to our sponsors of this evening's program and the whole series of programs that Celina is presenting in Central Iowa this week. Without them, this week-long series would not have been possible. They are the Platinum sponsors, Larry and Suzanne Ingman, Gold sponsors, Marilyn and Lou Hurwitz, and Gail Richards, our Silver sponsor, the Des Moines Area Community College, the War and the Human Experience Series, and of course, the Jewish Federation of Greater Des Moines. We also want to thank our board and our staff, the staff of the Jewish Federation, and Rabbi Barton and the staff of Tiferet Israel Synagogue, where we are tonight, for all of their hard work in making these programs happen. Tonight is very special in many ways. One of the reasons is that tonight is a homecoming for Celina and her grandson, Alex Biniaz-Harris. This synagogue was the spiritual home for Irvin and Phyllis Karp, Celina's parents and Alex's grandparents. During nearly 50 years, they lived here in Des Moines. And for Celina, before she moved to the East Coast for grad school, and that's where she met her husband.
Celina Karp was only 13 years old when the train carrying her mother, and 298 other women on Oskar Schindler's list to Schindler's factory was diverted to Auschwitz in a terrifying encounter with the butcher of Auschwitz, Dr. Joseph Mengele. 70 years later, Celina returned to Auschwitz to help mark the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz by the Soviet Army. Also on that trip were her grandson, Alex Biniaz-Harris, and Ambrose Soehn. And Alex and Ambrose had been invited by the director of the Shoah Foundation to compose an original piano piece inspired by the testimonies and the music of the Holocaust survivors. They would play their original composition at a reception for the survivors the night before the official commemoration of the anniversary. Tonight, all of us will have the unique opportunity to hear Celina share the story of her return to Auschwitz and the terrifying memories the visit brought back, and hear poems that she composed from the viewpoint of that 13-year-old girl. We will also have the privilege of hearing the story behind the composition that Alex and Ambrose played at the reception for the survivors of Auschwitz, and then to hear their original composition. Oskar Schindler once told Celina's parents that he was especially pleased to be able to save the families, as saving families meant that he was saving future generations, as he did with several generations of the Karp family. This is the first time ever that Celina, Alex, and Ambrose are presenting a program together. I am honored to introduce Alex Biniaz-Harris and Ambrose Soehn to tell us their story and play their composition.
Good evening. How's everybody doing? Good. It's really nice to be here in Des Moines. This is my third time being here. I was here briefly last year, but really the first extended trip in almost 20 years, and the last time I was here was just under 4 years old. So these are some of my first conscious memories being with the Des Moines and West Des Moines community, and it's surreal to spend time with very loving and generous people like you and your community, and also to meet and hear stories about my family, because as well as I know my grandmother Celina, I didn't have strong relationships with my great-grandparents, Phyllis and Irvin, because I was so young. but I feel like I'm meeting extensions of my family here tonight because I'm hearing stories and it makes them feel alive to me. And I'm very grateful for the hospitality that everyone has shown us while we've been here and for all the stories that make me feel more connected with my family. And it feels quite fitting that Ambrose and I get to perform this composition that was inspired by the music of the experiences of my grandmother and great-grandparents for you in the community that welcomed them from the harrowing experiences that they had in Europe.
Hi, my name is Ambrose. Like Alex, I'm a pianist and composer. And together as musicians, we're storytellers. It's just that instead of using words and sentences and paragraphs, we get to use the notes on the piano and melodies and harmonies. And at a time when so much of our national conversation is so focused on the differences that divide individuals and groups of people apart, it's a great and humbling experience for us to use the universal language that is music that we're so passionate about to tell a story, an extraordinary story that we hope will inspire empathy, will transcend differences in age and in religion and ethnicity and background and generation, and ultimately will foster a shared understanding of the world that, of course, we all share together. So without further ado, we are excited to be able to share this with you.
Thank you.
Behind the stage, right before we walked out to perform, I just started thinking about how unexpected this experience was to me.
Then there's always that moment right before the performance starts, where you try to stay centered, and yet our body and mind can tell us otherwise. My grandmother, Celina Biniaz, is a survivor of the Holocaust. She was a Schindler's List survivor, was put on the list by Schindler, along with her father and her mother.
I was liberated from Oskar Schindler's factory in Czechoslovakia on the 9th of May, 1945. I was on his list, and that is how I survived.
Growing up, I never knew about her history.
He knew that I was a survivor, but he didn't really know the whole story.
And I think it was a very good decision to leave me unaware of this.
And when he started working at Shoah, he went into the archives and saw the testimony, not only of my testimony, but my mother's testimony.
Getting to see both of their stories once working at the foundation was incredibly meaningful. And I was given a much greater sense historically of what was going on at the time in their lives than I ever knew before. She's so full of life. She's a student to this day, and she takes classes today. We've compared classes and what we're taking, and to be active in the world as a community member that she's been for the last 60 years since her experiences in the Holocaust. It inspires me every day. In May of 2014, the USC Shoah Foundation hosted the Ambassadors for Humanity Gala. And my grandmother, on behalf of the Jewish survivors community, was asked to speak. And the award recipient for that year of the Ambassador for Humanity was the President of the United States, Barack Obama.
I would have never believed that my experiences in camps and at Schindler's factory would ever be written up in a fabulous book, or that this incredible movie would be made, Schindler's List, or that I would ever be talking to a huge audience like that in the presence of the President of the United States.
I'm a senior studying neuroscience and piano performance at the University of Southern California. I started playing piano at a very young age, at 4.5. And so it's always been with me. Music and neuroscience, there's definitely a lot of overlap. The way that music makes people feel interests me very much. I really would love to study more about why music can bring people to tears, for example. So 2 summers ago, I took a research trip to Rwanda. Well, Rwanda is a very beautiful country, but very, very dark history to it. Once you start talking to the people, you realize that genocide really affects them each and every day, even today. My project, I was really interested in how to best facilitate trauma recovery. Music serves as kind of an opportunity to process and express the trauma in a way that bypasses language itself. So we both are interns at the U.S. Show Foundation, and as part of that, we often use the Visual History Archive to watch testimony and write about it and think about it and use it in different ways. This project, Melodies in Auschwitz, kind of was born out of the archive itself because of the huge trove of musical performance that's held within it.
This musical presence helped them as people survive.
Drawing inspiration on some of the melodies that we found that were performed or written in Auschwitz from the survivors, we were able to start composing what became our piano suite.
So for us, it was trying to combine traditional Jewish melody with our contemporary view on it.
We would get together and kind of just play around a little bit, and so like I'll be playing like a melody and some harmonies that might go well with it, and then all of a sudden Alex would have this great idea of maybe like a bass line that would just add a lot of depth to it. One of the first melodies that we encountered was from an Italian Jewish survivor. Her name is Lucia Amato, and she used the traditional Yiddish melody, but set her own text to it.
Qui in questa terra, triste e maledetta, soffrono molti figli di Israele.
Now from Lucia's melody, we wanted to use something in the context of pre-Holocaust Europe. And for people like Lucia, life was probably good. And we thought, in the context of a dance, with people enjoying themselves and laughing, that the waltz was a great way of conveying this emotion.
So I started by writing the first movement, which is titled Exodus. And it represents how just normal people living their daily lives were basically ripped away from everything they knew and sent to Auschwitz in this very forceful manner. To convey in a musical way what people would have felt as they walked off the train once they'd arrived at Auschwitz, that sinking, crushing feeling of seeing the most horrendous sight in front of you, having your loved ones just torn away, we decided to directly represent that on the keys by walking down from high to low.
The second movement I entitled Ashes to Earth. It represents the visual image of inmates arriving at the camp and seeing ashes as they come in, billowing out of the chimneys of the crematoria. It had to represent something that was cyclical. This wasn't just a one-time thing, this was constant.
Another melody that really inspired us is from a song that survivor Wolf Dean listened to as a young man when he was in the Lodz ghetto in Poland. And this melody is very slow and somber, and for me represents really what it would feel like to be not in control of your own future.
Ghetto, che tu nel ghetto ma kochana brzmi ghetto, little ghetto, ma dodatek little ghetto.
last movement was more of a collaborative effort because it grew organically, and we titled it Inner Refractions. The reason that we chose Inner Refractions was that survivors left the camp a little bit hollowed out, and they had to reconceptualize the world and what it meant to them. And so these refractions are meant to be sort of hollow ghosts. And the ghosts exist within all survivors and within the camp as well. January 27th, 2015 was the 70th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz concentration camp.
In a few years' time, our generation won't have any direct access to survivors who actually lived through that experience. So the moment we found out we were going to be traveling to Poland to perform this piece, we were understandably pretty excited.
And it was an incredible feeling knowing that the work paid off, and that we'd have this chance to play for survivors and communicate with them the message that we had tried to develop over the months.
We were looking over the plans of how the stage was going to be set up and everything like that. And we quickly realized that the stage was not going to be able to support the weight of 2 full grand pianos, and told to basically reduce our entire 2-piano suite into a 1-piano work for 4 hands. We were going to have to do a lot of rewriting and condensing in order to delineate the parts so that we weren't constantly jutting into each other.
And we were changing the piece up until the hours before the performance.
Through the whole condensing process, the piece matured in a way that it really couldn't have if we hadn't been told that we had a week to kind of rewrite the entire thing for 1 piano.
It's a real moment right now. I still think the thrill hasn't hit yet. I think once we land in Europe, it's going to start feeling much more real. But I'm incredibly excited. This is going to be it. We're about to embark on a pretty incredible journey.
So, got our passports, got our music, let's go. Here we are, finally here, standing in the old square in sunny Krakow. And we are getting excited for tomorrow morning.
That's the moment when it hits you like, this is real life, this is happening. When they tell you you're on in 5 seconds.
The piece that we wrote tells this story of the Holocaust in kind of a non-traditional way. So through the medium of music, I hope that people are able to listen to it and, knowing a little bit of background information, kind of emotionally connect with the subject matter.
Music is really the one true universal language, in that across all boundaries, across all cultures and language, we will all be able to understand these melodies and interpret it in the way that we'd like. Music has that ability to keep life going. And I think it's our duty as young people to educate other young people about the ills of genocide.
We, the survivors, who are now in our 80s and 90s, have definitely passed the torch to the new generation.
And so it's important to raise awareness about what happened and to keep fresh in our memories that this type of thing could happen again. And it really does go even beyond anti-Semitism. And in a way, it's trying to help rid the world of all forms of baseless racial and ethnic intolerance. The fact that we were able to contribute to that message in such a personal way through music is really incredible.
To see Auschwitz at night lit up with people walking around with candles, I just thought it was such an incredible experience for him, and I was glad that he had that experience. In terms of listening to him play, that was fantastic. I mean, every grandmother would love to have a grandson play.
but I knew for her that it was so emotional coming back to this awful place. And I could feel it, even though I know that a lot of these emotions she had wrapped up for a long time after the war. She was finally able to let all the ghosts go away.
Out of the ashes of Auschwitz, there is a new generation.
grandmother's testimony for the first time when I was a sophomore in college. I just started working at USC Shoah Foundation as an intern watching testimonies. My job was to watch video testimony of survivors of the Holocaust and other genocides as well. But part of my assignment for one day was I was allowed to watch my grandmother's testimony for the first time. I was not aware of many of my grandmother's experiences growing up, but I always admired that she tried to maintain a normal relationship as grandmother and grandson. And now that I know more about her experiences from watching testimony and having done a lot of research of my own on the Holocaust and of her family's experiences, I'm grateful to have had a very standard relationship between grandmother and grandson, where her main objective is to give me all of the food in her house so that she can leave the refrigerator and the pantry as empty as possible. It's with great pleasure that I get to introduce my grandmother, the youngest living survivor on Schindler's List, Celina Biniaz.
I was sent to Auschwitz by the Shoah Foundation and the World Jewish Congress at the same time that Ambrose and Alex were there. The idea was that I was one of the 100 prisoners to not celebrate, but to attend the ceremonies of the 70th anniversary of liberation of Auschwitz. 10 years prior to that, they had 1,500 people attending, 1,500 survivors. This was going to be the last one of those affairs because they figured that in another 10 years, there will be nobody left from that generation. I had a very interesting experience being there. It was almost like an out-of-body experience. There I was, 83 years old, woman, but I did not feel me. I felt that 13-year-old girl going through all of these experiences in Auschwitz. It just seemed, somehow, after 70 years, this just came to me. I had never written anything in my life, but it just so happens that I attend Bernard Osher's university. He has a program at every university practically called Lifelong Learning Institute, where we meet with academic professors for 2 hours, no tests, no assignments as such. Just sit there for 2 hours, let your brain work, and it's wonderful. You meet all kinds of retired people from all kinds of businesses and professions, and we exchange ideas. And while we're sitting there, the mind works, even if it doesn't remember afterwards. So it just so happens that I had signed up for a course of 4 weeks called Tapestry. And I thought there was a history of tapestries, which I would be very interested in. I walk into the class, and there are only about 12 of us, and I discover that it's not history of tapestries, but rather tapestry of poetry. Something that I had never written, something that I really have never even thought about. But the teacher was the poet laureate of Ventura County, where I live, and she was an excellent teacher. And the way she talked and the way she drew things out of me provided me with a way to write down my experiences of that time. So what I have written down is what a 13-year-old girl went through in Auschwitz and right after. So I have to give you a little bit of background of it. As you know, I was placed on Schindler's List with my parents, And Schindler's List consisted of 1,100 people, 800 men and 300 women. The 800 men left at the end of September because our concentration camp was being liquidated because this was 1944 and the Russian army was approaching Krakow. So the 800 men went in boxcars and left. And of course, we didn't know whether they got there or not because there was no communication. 2 weeks later, it was the beginning of October, the 300 women were placed in 3 boxcars, 100 people to each boxcar, and we went on our way. We traveled all day and half the night, and all of a sudden, the train stopped. And this is exactly what happened. Night, so dark, so cold. The wagon sways. The rhythmic pounding of the wheels repeating sends a message to my frightened heart. Do not stop beating. Sudden lurch, screech of steel on steel. The door slides open. Rouse, rouse. Angry voices shouting, multitude of dogs barking. Plumes of fire illuminate the night sky. Smoke drifts over the gathered people. The smell, the awful smell. It is the smell of fear. We have arrived in hell. So we get to Auschwitz, and this is exactly what happens. They gather us in a group, take us from place to place. First barrack, they tell us to strip, take all our clothes off, so now we are naked. Then they move us into a next barrack, we walk across, and there are lady barbers there, and they start cutting our hair. If they like you, they only cut bits and pieces of it, but if they don't like you, they shave your whole head. From then, we are led into another barrack. Actually, it's not a barrack, it is a place called sauna, or sauna in German, which means bath. We are locked in there, all of us naked, behind the locked door. We look up, and there are the spigots and we don't know whether we're going to get shower, or whether we're going to get gas. So we just stand there waiting. And when finally the water comes down, there's incredible jubilation because we realize that we now have at least another day of life. From there, they take us into another barrack, and we are issued striped pajamas and wooden clogs, and then we go off to the barracks. Each of us ends up in 100 into 3 barracks. We still don't know why we are there, but all the clothes and everything that we had shed in the first barrack is no longer ours. All we have on us are the striped pajamas and the cloths. We end up in the barracks. They place us into 5 people on each berth. So now you have you sleeping foot, head, foot, head, foot. And so if you want to turn, only 2 people at a time can turn, But it has to be 2 people. You can't just one person turn. So that's where we are. We are there for almost 5.5 weeks. During the 5.5 weeks, we stand on being counted 3 times a day for almost 2 hours each time, in rows of 5. Now it is cold. Now it's the end of October, beginning of November. Poland is quite cold at that time. There's snow on the ground. In order to conserve some heat, we arrange in such a way that the person who is in the very front and the person who is in the very back change places with the people who are in the middle, so that everybody gets a little bit of a warmth and we don't freeze to death. This happens, as I said, 3 times a day, 2 hours each time. In between, we have to shovel snow, we have to clean the latrines, we have to, some of the women are taken to the kitchen to peel potatoes. And that is our life, and of course we don't know still how long are we going to be here or why we're there. On one day I should say, my mother volunteers to go and peel potatoes, thinking that she could probably take some of the peels with her, bring back under her clothes, so we would have a little more to eat. We were kind of starving at that point. We got just one piece of bread and a bowl of soup at lunchtime. It just so happened that on that particular day, that barrack, my barrack, was being taken for selection. Now, selections were occurred all the time. That was when Dr. Bengler chose whether you could live or you could or did not, you know. Well, that particular day, my mother is gone, and my barrack is being taken for selection. And this is what happens. Selection. There he stands, resplendent in his uniform, shiny black boots, insignia on his chest, swastika armband on his sleeve, and in his hand a pencil. Unusual, this pencil, for with one flick to either left or right, it has the power to give you life or death. In front of him, a line of naked women, all shapes and sizes. This is my second time confronting the pencil. First time was not lucky. But the pencil beckons the group back into the line. My body is skinny, undeveloped, but clean. Don't know how or why. The will to live forces me to utter these words, lessons in me. This time the pencil slowly leans towards life. I grab my pile of clothes, hugging them, run out into the snowy outdoors. My pent-up emotions burst forth. Hysterically crying, start to put on my clothes. I'm only 13 and have gotten a reprieve from death from Dr. Mengele, the butcher of Auschwitz. I'm outside getting dressed and I see my mother running crazily down the road because she had just heard that the barrack went into selection, and she of course didn't know what had happened. And years later, as I was thinking about these things, you know, and grew older, I wondered what I would have done if my mother had been dead. Would I have been dependent upon her to save me? And that sort of taught me not to be too judgmental about how one proceeds in life. We never know how we would act given a certain situation. It was, in a way, a lesson. So we are there, as I said, for all this time, 5.5 weeks. One day, we are led from the barrack to another barrack. We are told we're going to be tattooed. Well, to be tattooed in Auschwitz, it meant that you were then member of Auschwitz, or member of Birkenau, no longer transported out at that point. While we're walking, and I keep asking my mother, is it gonna hurt, is it gonna hurt? While we're walking, all of a sudden we are told to veer to a different direction, and we do, and the 300 women find ourselves in front of Oskar Schindler, who had come all the way from Czechoslovakia with a valise full of money to bribe the commandant, which I'm sure that's what he was waiting for, to get his women. He tells us to get into the boxcars quickly, quickly, and we do. Close the cars and we proceed on. For about 2 days later, we arrived in Brindlitz, which was the place where the factory was. And we are there, doors open, and this is the first time that we see the men behind the barbed wire, because we didn't know whether they made it or not. And they are looking at us and not recognizing anybody, because here we are, shaven or clipped with strange looking clothes and everything, you know, but they're extremely happy to see all the women there. Schindler was incredible in that sense that he created barracks for us on top of the factory, which made it nice and warm. There was 2 barracks, 2 floors for men, and 3 floors for men and 2 floors for women. And we are there, and we start working in the factory. It is a munitions factory. We're supposedly making parts for the V2s, which are shelling all of London, or were shelling all of London. But Schindler comes to all of us in small groups and tells us that nothing of that factory is going to leave that factory to be of any value to anybody, because all the machinery has been changed by a millimeter to create items that were not true. And we on the calibrators working, which were measuring these parts, and the guards were behind us, so they were watching us. The calibrators were fixed in such a way to show that each part was perfect, you know. So he had decided to really, he told us to sabotage everything. I was particularly chosen with another little girl because our arms were very small, our hands were very small, to clean the machinery inside and out, to oil them, etc. So that was one of my jobs there. Then, we know that we're going to be liberated because we hear we have a clandestine radio that tells us that on April 20th, FDR dies, and we are very concerned about that. It was in April that he died, and we are very concerned about that because we didn't know how that would affect the liberation of us. But we are hopeful, and our war ends in May 8th and 9th, and we are finally liberated by the Russian army. But we need to make sure that our benefactor is saved because he saved us. So we dressed him and Mrs. Schindler in scarlet pajamas, put him in their car, and assigned 2 young men from the prisoners to drive them to the American zone at night, because we knew that if Russians caught him, he was an original Nazi. They would have killed him right on the spot. They would have never listened to him to save all these people. So this is what we do as a reward, you know, to make sure that we save them. And we are waiting then for the Russians to come to liberate us. We have to wait for about 2 days, for April 9th, because there was an agreement by the 3 powers at the altar that said that the Russians were going to liberate Czechoslovakia, and the Americans were going to liberate Germany and parts of Austria. So here we were waiting, and finally on May 9th, the Russian army comes to liberate us. Liberation. May 9th, 1945. We are survivors. To exit barbed wire gates, 2 days we are waiting. Not safe on the outside, with black shirts still eroding. A soldier on a horse appears in the distance. Behind him, a small, bedraggled group of soldiers. They have come to liberate us. We are survivors. The barbed wire gates open. We are free, hesitant to venture beyond. How can one walk alone? not in a row of 5, not overseen by guards, armed, ready to shoot. We are survivors. How after 5 years, following orders, can we think and act on our own? Will we be able to restore our humanity, or will we always be held suspect in society? Will there be a rejoining with the rest of the family, or will we encounter their loss, forever gone into eternity? We are survivors. Freedom is ours, comes with problems. Can we retrieve former lives? Can we go back to homes we lost? Having experienced horrific events, starving, fearful, we start on our journey. 11 days walking, hitching, emaciated scarecrows reach Krakow. There is no welcome. We are not wanted. 4 months later, we are back on the road, leaving Europe, seeking new existence in more welcoming areas, countries. We are survivors. We shall succeed. So, we end up traveling over our border from Poland to Czechoslovakia, again in a truck. We drive the Russian soldier at night because the border was already closed. We take another 2 weeks to traverse off Czechoslovakia, and in the middle of the night we smuggle ourselves over the border into the American zone. We end up in a displaced persons camp for about 2 weeks, and then my mother decides that she's had enough of camps, and we decide to move into a Joint Distribution Committee finds us an apartment, or to share an apartment with a woman whose husband was a Nazi and was killed during the war. And we are there, perfectly willing to live on ration cards and on packages from UNRWA. UNRWA is the United Nations Relief Organization. And those packages are marvelous because they have coffee, they have chocolate, they have soap, they have cigarettes, they have all the items that none of the Germans have seen for years, so we can use them to barter, because now I have just finished learning things in Poland about going back to school. Now I'm back in Germany and I cannot go to school again. But the lucky part of it is that there is a woman, there's a cloister, semi-cloister in that town, a small town of Mindelheim, Bavaria. In that semi-cloister, the nuns do not go out, the children go in for education. I am going to be taught by a 90-year-old nun who went into the convent at the age of 16 and never left. And she's going to teach me English and German. English because we already knew that my Uncle Dave here in Des Moines was preparing an affidavit for us to come to the United States. My experience with this particular nun changed my life, so I wrote a poem about her. Her name was Mater Leontine. In a small town in southern Bavaria, in a semi-cloistered convent, the home of the English sisters, a 90-year-old retired nun entered the convent at age 16, never left it in all these years. She's German and Catholic. She will teach a 14-year-old girl traumatized by years of ghettos and camps, German and English. She does not know she's supposed to hate her. Hitler's ideas and propaganda are not part of her knowledge. Her outlook on life, gentle manner, and total acceptance slowly work the magic of transformation. the realization not all Germans are ogres. Hatred is corrosive. Have to work through anger and hate to move forward in life. We bond for 2 years. Leaving for America after 2 years, our letters crisscross the oceans for the next 2 years. Martha Leontine loves to hear about America. She's so very happy to hear about my new life. The letter arrives from Mother Superior. At 94, Martha Leontine is no longer with us. That is absurd. That cannot be, for I have all her letters still, for she will always be a part of me in my heart and memories, for she was my salvation. And I do have 15 of her letters still, after all these years. Okay, so we live in this town for 2 years, and I find I barter the provisions that we get to various teachers. I study mathematics, I study Latin, I study history, I study science, I study as much as I can, because up here there's nothing there, so everything stays in. I can still mention some that to this day, what I learned there. Also, the guy was a Nazi, and I was trying to impress him, to show him that a Jewish girl could learn, you know? So we're living there for 2 years, and the first year that we are there comes the winter, time. And this is a poem that I wrote. It's called Silent Night. It's sort of a comparison to what happened on the night we arrived in Auschwitz. Every time I hear Silent Night, it brings me back to a snowy night in Mindelheim, Germany. First winter after the war. The night sky is illuminated by a myriad of blinking stars. The church bells are ringing out Stille Nacht, which means silent night in German. No bombs falling, no loud noises of shooting, or soldiers good marching, no commandants shouting into rows of 5 pushing, no more in fright cowering. We have survived. It is Christmas Eve, and I am free. I feel the peace and tranquility and hope for goodwill to all mankind to take hold. All right, now after 2 years, we finally get our affidavits. They arrive, and we have to go to Munich to pick up our visas. And we go to Munich, which was American, the consular service was there. And on the street in Munich, we should happen on to Oskar Schindler. I don't know what he was doing in Munich, but he saw us. He knew my parents very well. He is absolutely thrilled that we are going to the United States and that we're going to have a new life, because that was exactly his purpose in saving the families. He wanted to save families because families were able to reproduce and bring on the new generations, you know. So after 2 years, we go. There was still no transportation in Germany at that time, so we end up going from Munich to Bremerhaven, which is the port of departure. Again, in boxcars. There was still no transportation as such. So we go in the boxcars, and it just so happens that on the day that we go on the ship, I am 16. It's my birthday. It is the SS Marlin. The foghorns sound. The engines begin to choke. Today is my birthday. I am 16 years old. The SSC Marlin is a vessel of hope for my new life. I turn and look east, see the continent slowly disappearing. It's a place I know and understand. It is a place that does not want me. Maybe the West will be more welcoming. The SSC Marlin is a troop ship. It ferried soldiers to fight Nazism. Now it ferries Europe's discards, immigrants with guarded hope. Will this new place give them identity? Will it accept their humanity? Only the future will tell. For now they're happy, they've escaped Europe's hell. Well, that was my ship. We got into New York after 11 days. Everybody got sick on the ship, except me. I ate everybody's ice cream. You know, I didn't have any of that. My uncle drove his car to pick us up in New York. It was an extreme experience to come from completely devastated Europe, you know, with everything in ruins, to come into New York and see these neon signs and lights and everything, and everybody happy and wonderful. It was really great. My uncle drove us back to Des Moines, and driving from the East Coast to Des Moines, I thought it was an incredibly long and huge area, not realizing that it was a very small portion of the United States, really. So we come to Des Moines, and right away I registered with North High School, which accepted me into the 12th grade, because I had brought all my papers and notebooks, etc., so they could see what I had studied. I'm very lucky there. I have a wonderful year at North High School with friends, great teachers. Everything is going just superbly well. And the girls' advisor happens to be a Grinnell graduate and makes it her mission to enroll me at Grinnell for my future education. She drives me there by herself, convinces the Grinnell faculty to give me a full academic scholarship and work program for room and board. And that's how Iowa educated me. I have to close this with a poem that means a great deal to me. It is called Tree. In Jerusalem, in Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum, in the street of the righteous Gentiles, in a designated third spot from the start, a man plants a tree. Womanizer, cheater, black market profiteer, risk taker, gambler, takes on the biggest gamble in his life. He puts 1,100 names on a list, lies, bribes authorities, wrenches a group of human beings from the jaws of evil. This group, under his protection, will survive the war. Magnificent, this tree, dedicated to Oskar Schindler. As it grows and spreads its limbs, roots and branches proliferate. So do the descendants of the saved group, new generations. I bear witness, evil can be harvested. People of goodwill can make a difference. Forever I shall be in debt and grateful to Oskar Schindler for giving me a life. Start in life, but for being such great community for my parents who lived here for 50 years and had a wonderful life. after all that they went through. So I will always be grateful to this community for having done all of these good deeds. And you want to talk now? I got it. When my parents died, when my mother died, I donated the cup to the society, the Jewish Historical Society, because my mother, whenever she looked at that Schindler cup, she kept it on the windowsill always, and whatever she said, that whenever anything bad was going to happen, all she had to do was look at the cup and say to herself, there's a better tomorrow. Mr. Schindler, when he was leaving, also made sure that the people that were leaving this factory, when he took over the factory to make it into a munitions factory, it had been prior to that a cloth factory, and there were some remnants there. He appointed some people, older, people, the prisoners, to distribute some of the stuff that was left over. He wanted us to have something to barter for our lodging, for our food, for whatever. So our family got 2 bolts of cloth and 5 pairs of scissors. We used up the cloth, there's no question about it, right away. We bartered the 4 pairs of scissors, but I kept 1 pair of scissors all these years. For 40 years, when I lived on the East Coast, they were just in my sewing kit. Never used, but they were there. Because I knew that one of these days, they're gonna have to come home. And they are coming home. They came here to Des Moines when we first arrived here with the cup, and now they're gonna find a permanent home because I'm donating Schindler scissors to the Iowa Jewish home. I'm sure, an amount of trepidation that everything would work out all right. Loved the performance of my sisters will be so happy to be next to the Schindler Cup. Yes, for them it's all fun. I'm coming home.
You've heard Celina tell her story, and you've heard the story of several other generations. The goal of the Iowa Jewish Historical Society is to inspire people to become involved with Jewish history. And that's what Celina's story and Alex and Ambrose's story today has done. Celina's story is her personal story, but it's also everyone's history. It's your history, it's my history, and it's world history. And we're very grateful that you've come this evening to join us in hearing this piece of history. And Celina is going to be staying around, as is Alex and Ambrose, to answer any questions. Please, if you have questions, ask. And then we also invite you to join us for a dessert reception. They're in the process of having the desserts come out in the back. So please enjoy, and thank you again for coming. up and see the cup and the scissors and enjoy dessert.
Just don't take it.